So y'all, we're back. And the reason why I know y'all think this is just a Florida sort of angle, and that's why I'm harping on it. But as we think about the fact that Donald Trump is going into the White House, we got DeSantis who want to be president of the United States. Just know that what we are about to experience in Trump 2.0, this authoritarian wannabe strongman dictator, is going to be much more capable of playing that role of strongman. And I will say in part because he has sat in an armchair looking at Ron DeSantis in the state of Florida. And I don't say that as a former opponent. I say that as a citizen, as a resident of this state, where in the case of Monique Worrell, who is the duly elected,
reelected
state attorney and reelected state attorney covering Osceola in Orange County, which for those of you all not familiar, is Central Florida, Disney World, the outskirts of it, Orlando, and whatnot. But she stands on the shoulders of an already really important figure, Aramis Ayala, who preceded her as the first Black woman ever elected state attorney in the entire state of Florida's history. And she came after her. And because she campaigned, again, y'all remember 2020, we had come out of the year of George Floyd and people were starting to look open to looking at the justice system a different way. Well, she ran on a principled justice platform that basically said, lock them up and throw away the key is not the answer to everything. Right. In fact, let's look at the many ways in which justice can be carried out to the benefit of the victim, to the creating the wholeness of the victim, but also doing good and just for the society and the individuals. And this governor in Florida, Ron DeSantis, decided that he would sign an executive order to remove her, suspend her as the state's attorney, and cited for his reasons incompetence, unqualified, and soft on crime. Now, as you and I all know, y'all, when I run for an office like that, I run on a platform. I'm telling you what it is I'm trying to accomplish. The voters then hear that and they make a declarative decision on election day whether or not they want to advance that model or not. But this governor said, oh, I'm all powerful. I know you were duly elected, but because we have a philosophical difference, you're unfit for the office and I hereby remove you. That thing went all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court, a Supreme Court where he appointed 8 of the 9 justices that were sitting on that bench. And of course, they decided to rubber stamp the governor's removal of her and would not reinstate her in office. What does she do? Like most hardworking, good Black women I know, she stood right back up and said, I'm running again and I'm going to reclaim my time and my position, my title, and the good work that we were doing. She ran in 2024, y'all, this past November. And even in a Florida where Donald Trump ran away with the Electoral College and all that stuff, she got reelected 60-40 over her opponent. And do y'all know this past Tuesday when she was sworn in that already reporters, the Capitol Press Corps, everybody's swirling with rumor that Ron DeSantis is going to work to remove her again, except this time there is a prosecution that is possibly going to come forth from her neighboring state attorney in Polk County over some, don't wait for the thing to drop, some trumped up mess to remove her from office and become the governor's justification for taking her out yet again. Again, this is not just the Florida story to our listeners. For those of you all in Florida, please pay attention. Please fight. This is why, Tiff, when you kept saying Black women, we're going to take a break and we coming back in there. This is why it's never opportune for us to step back from politics. Why? Because we're the first thing on the chopping block, the first thing swinging. And look no further than the story of Monique Worrell, state attorney. Congratulations on your reelection. Yes. We're with you in solidarity. And I'm asking our listening and viewing audience to please stay tuned to what happens in this case. This woman is dedicated, committed, elected, reelected, blessed, highly favored, but yet she is a target for the right. And Angela and Tiff, we all know enough people in power who are Black, who have come under same and similar scrutiny for having done nothing at all.
And that's just
wrong.
it. We should hear just for a moment from Monique Worrell and talk a little bit more about this alleged grand jury investigation on the other side of this clip.
18 months ago, I stood on these very steps after being unjustly removed from office that you elected me to. I told you then that I didn't intend to give up. And as a result of you standing with me over these last 18 months, today I am honored to return to the seat of the people's state attorney.
The people's.
The people's.
That's the resonant, right? Y'all remember Kamala Harris saying, I stood up and I said, Kamala Harris, for the people. For the people. That's who elected this woman, the people. And a governor believes that he has the power because I disagree.
Well, the Florida law, sadly, if she is indicted by a grand jury, Florida law states that the governor has the power to suspend any state official under those circumstances. Again, to the point, Andrew, you have been a part of that. We know Marilyn Mosby, whose pardon we are still seeking, has been subject to these types of issues. Kim Gardner in St. Louis, subject to these same types of issues. Just because a prosecutor comes after you and just because a grand jury indicts you based on the lies in an indictment does not mean that you are guilty. And so what the Florida voters are up against is whether or not their vote can supersede the will of the governor and how many times they have to demonstrate to the Florida governor what their will is. And I hate that this is happening. Andrew, every time I look at Florida, I just think it would have been so much better if my brother would have won.
Well, Angela, I got to tell you, I'll go back to my premise, which is the reason why this is so key for all of us is the playbook has been played.
It's played
It is
out.
written. And Donald Trump, we're going to see this thing on scalable fashion.
Yeah.
When this man assumes office. And we just got to be vigilant, y'all. I've never thought that just like Pence couldn't just say, I'm throwing out these votes, these electoral college votes. This man said, I'm throwing out all tens of thousands of votes. And one man, gets to decide who holds that seat.
I think that the concern that I'm seeing here is looking at this situation, Andrew, which is a microcosm for what we've seen across the country, but then looking at the president-elect, who himself is convicted of multiple felonies. And if this is a question we were kind of tooling with in our group chat.
Facing sentencing, by the way, Tiff, before his inauguration.
Yes.
Which, by the way, if he isn't sentenced, he will not be a felon.
Right. But I guess the question is in this country, and I think we are sadly going to be confronted with, is if the president can do it and face no consequence, if the insurrectionists of January 6th can attempt to overthrow a government and face no consequence, then what is the law?
Yeah. It matters who you are.
What are the infrastructures of society that now govern us?
That's right.
Because they have said, on their side, we can throw these things out. And when we don't throw them out, we will weaponize them against our opponents. And that is the terrain of society that we're maneuvering in now.
Tiffany,
I think it's a FAFO, Andrew. I think people have around and now they're going to find out. And people are increasingly tuned out, which I'll talk about on the other side of a break. But people are increasingly tuned out, which I understand. I completely get it. People are righteously disgusted with it. But I just wonder, like the story that you told, Andrew, is not going to be above the fold on the New York Times. It's not going to be leading coverage on CNN. It's not going to be breaking news on MSNBC. No. The thousands of ways that they bleed us by 1,000 cuts before they decapitate us are the things that's going to lead to the downfall of society. And it is baffling, yet not surprising to me, that Black women are often the people on the front lines of this fight.
And that's, as you know, the reason why it won't lead any of those sites or sources or entities that you reference, because the target is us.
Yeah.
We are less than our percent of the population in elective office, right? But how is it that every Black elected official we can name right now has some kind of federal state probe going into them.
Yeah.
At some point, I said this to Angela, yes, at some point, this is no longer just a coincidence that Black mayors, governors, senators, state's attorneys, the prosecutors, you telling me the people who bring the cases, if you Black, are now on the other side of those cases with your neighboring prosecutors choosing to come after you, doing the governor, the president's, and everybody else's bidding. And this shit has to stop. And what stops it? The mechanisms? I used to believe in a Supreme Court who said that democracy mattered. But when they decided to hand the keys over to a dictator, that stopped being the case. And now state Supreme Courts, which used to be able to be relied upon to follow the Constitution and law, are following the fashions of their Republican governor. And that becomes the dictate to how you don't even need to read the case law, y'all. You don't have to read the briefs. You don't have to read the weight of the argument. All you need to know is the political party bringing the case on either side. And I can tell you in this state and now in this nation, where that shit's going to end.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.